Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are tackling one of the biggest, absolute deepest mysteries out there. What exactly is your own experience? I mean, this is a question so huge, it's forcing us to rethink, well, everything we thought we knew about reality. So let's start with something that seems super simple, right? Think about the taste of coffee. Science is great at explaining what coffee is. The molecules, the heat, how it hits your brain. But what it can't explain is the feeling of tasting it, that inner, private experience. Why isn't it all just, dark, silent computer processing going on in your skull? Well, this puzzle is so big, it actually has a name. A philosopher named David Chalmers back in '95, he called it the hard problem of consciousness. And the key here is that it's not about what the brain does. It's about why it feels like something from the inside while it's doing all that stuff. So to really get a grip on this, you gotta see the difference between what scientists call the easy problems and the hard problem. Now, the easy problems, they aren't easy at all. They're super complex, but they're all about figuring out the mechanics. How does memory work? How do we process light? It's all about mapping the brain's machinery. We can literally watch neurons fire, but the hard problem, that's a totally different beast. It's asking who or what is the ghost in the machine. Yeah, there's this huge gap, this chasm between the physical stuff, the neurons and chemicals in your brain, and the inner feeling of, say, seeing the color red or feeling happy. Right now, science has no bridge across that gap, and that's exactly what it's called, the explanatory gap. For a long, long time, the standard scientific view has been pretty straightforward. Matter is the basic building block of everything. You get a bunch of matter, you arrange it in a really complex way, like a brain, and poof, consciousness just kind of appears, like it's some sort of byproduct, a happy little biological accident. But that explanatory gap we talked about, it's so massive, it just won't go away. And because of it, a whole bunch of physicists and philosophers are starting to ask a pretty radical question. What if we have this whole thing completely backwards? And here's the alternative, the mind-bending idea. What if consciousness isn't something the brain makes at all? What if consciousness is the fundamental stuff of reality, the actual source code from which the entire physical universe, our brains included, emerges? Okay, and this is where it gets really, really interesting. Because this idea, which sounds so new and out there, is actually where two totally different worlds collide. Ancient spiritual wisdom and the super weird, cutting-edge world of quantum physics. I mean, check this out. Thousands of years ago, there was this ancient Indian philosophy called Advaita Vedanta, and it proposed this exact same thing. It says that the ultimate reality, they called it Brahman, is just one single pure universal consciousness. And everything else, the whole universe of separate objects and people, it's all just a kind of manifestation, like a dream happening inside that one big mind. Now just listen to how perfectly that ancient thought is echoed by a modern quantum physicist. Amit Goswami basically says we've got it backwards. We're trying to explain consciousness with physics, but consciousness isn't just another thing physics can explain. Everything else is a thing happening in consciousness. And look, this isn't just some philosophical flight of fancy. This stuff is popping up in the lab. Quantum mechanics shows us that down at the tiniest subatomic level, reality is just bizarre. Particles don't even seem to be real in a solid sense until we look at them. That's the observer effect. And then you have particles that are connected and they can affect each other instantly across the entire universe. The point is, the universe doesn't act like a simple machine. It acts more like a system that's waiting for awareness to interact with it. And this is a perfect picture of that convergence we're talking about. On one hand, you've got modern science tracing the entire universe back to a tiny quantum blip in nothingness. And on the other, you have this ancient philosophy saying it all came from a single conscious source. I mean, wow. Two completely different roads leading to an almost identical place. So what you end up with are two totally different ways to see reality. You've got the old materialist view. You are your brain. Your consciousness is just a fluke, and when you die, lights out, game over. But then there's this Vedantic/quantum view. Consciousness is the real deal. You're not the body, you're the consciousness using the body, like a player in a game. And death, it's just unplugging the controller. I mean, these are fundamentally different ways of looking at our entire existence. Okay, so this is all fascinating cosmic stuff, right? But let's bring it all the way down to Earth. What does any of this actually mean for you, living your life right here, right now? A really powerful way to think about this is the radio analogy. Imagine universal consciousness is like a radio signal, broadcasting everything, everywhere, all the time. Now, your brain, it isn't the radio station that's creating the music. No, your brain is the radio receiver. It just tunes into that universal broadcast and plays one specific station, which is your unique individual experience. And think about it. If you smash the radio, you don't destroy the broadcast signal, right? You just break that one receiver. And this right here, this is the big shift. It totally reframes who you think you are. You're not a brain that somehow has consciousness. You are consciousness that happens to have a brain. You're not the biological machine that cooked up awareness out of nothing. You're a little piece of that universal awareness using a biological machine to have an experience. And if that's true, well, that means creativity isn't just for painters and musicians. Remember that observer effect from quantum physics, where just looking at something seems to bring it into reality? Well, if awareness is the thing that turns pure possibility into actual, concrete experience, then your attention, where you put your focus, your intention, those are all acts of creation. It means you are literally actively co-creating your reality from moment to moment to moment. And that leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. The hard problem isn't just some abstract puzzle for scientists in a lab to solve. If you take this idea seriously that consciousness is fundamental, it becomes the most personal question there is. It suggests we're not just passengers watching a movie of a pre-made universe. We're actually the co-creators. So the ultimate question becomes, what kind of reality are you going to choose to create?